Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Night workers of Reddit, what's the spookiest/creepiest thing you've ever seen at work? I frequently work night shifts at a coal mine in the mountains. 12-hour shifts. 4 a.m. finally rolls along and I get off of my piece of equipment to go take a piss and stretch lunch/coffee break. It's pitch black, and dead silent. Eerily silent. I walk slowly around my dozer while having a quick smoke and think nothing about it. I crawl back up into the cab of my dozer and turn on the lights. There it was, just staring at me from the ground, and we must have circled each other perfectly around my dozer. It's not paranormal or anything, but it is creepy as hell knowing he was just a few feet from me while I had no clue. Some guy died of heroin overdose in our bathroom. He apparently died that morning and was in one of the stalls. No one on day shift noticed he was gone. He wasn't found until lunch break, which is midnight for us on nights. Fucking love these creepy threads. I don't typically work overnights, but one night we had a huge shipment, so I offered to help. It was about 3:30 in the morning and I went to our front doors and looked outside. The security guard was a fat boy using a Segway, so they outran him. But I opened my doors to see what was going on and they had robbed the jewelry store a few stores down. The police came with their dogs as soon as we were leaving. We ended up getting questioned and checked by the dogs. While doing my rounds around the building, I could swear I would hear someone talking, but could never find anyone. Passing someone as I was headed away from a dead end, then passing them again around the corner. Yes, finally a spooky thread that's gaining some traction. Here's mine. It's not especially spooky, but it's entertaining. I used to work from 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. at a SX shop and saw a fair amount of nefarious hijinks. This one started out as a story most closing shift workers can relate to. It was 12:10 a.m. and I was closing shop. Doors locked, lights out, register closed. All I had left was the review sheet. A car pulled up, but I assumed they were going to go into the 24 Hours gas station adjoining the store. They weren't. These two huge men and a woman step out and come up to the locked door. People just can't connect. Lights out, sign off, door locked with store closed. They start trying to open the door and I walk up and say loudly, "We're closed." I'm about to also open the door to say it again and apologize when these guys spot me and go nuts. One barks at me to open up. This wasn't my first encounter with whack jobs, and so I was on alert but also calm. It's honestly just part of that job. I say, "Sorry, we are closed." Point to the hours and say my register is already shut down, there is nothing I can do. They say something about getting something and paying for it in the morning, which was retarded, so I ignored it and turned to continue my paperwork and cleaning. I can hear these guys f***ing with the locks and the door and I'm getting pretty angry, so I'm going about my business as quickly as I can when I hear a loud bang. I look and the girl and one guy have left and the other guy is there trying to open the door with brute force. When that didn't work, he resorted to trying to break the glass. I shout in as stern a voice an 18-year-old girl can manage that I will call the cops if he doesn't leave. He isn't fazed and this is just normal glass separating us. By now I'm hunkered down waiting for death, crying behind a rack of anal porn. I also can't run because I don't drive myself, and I am pretty sure the other two are circling the store anyways. Just then a bright light shines throughout the store and Captain America comes into view. It's my group of friends decked out in Marvel gear, all amped to go, and my best friend was dressed up ready to walk in and ham it up in costume. My friend sees the guy at the door and straight asks the guy WTF he is doing. The two other people round from the back and look my friend up and down and just book it to their car and pull out. I got the FCK out of there and jump into my friend's car and tell them what was going on, to which they pretty much laugh at and joke about being real-life crime fighters. As we drove away I could see that the car hadn't left the parking lot yet. I don't know if they tried anything after I left, but the next day I never heard anything about it. Two come to mind. I was in AM at a retail store. I often closed the store and oversaw deliveries in the early morning. We did our aisle clear and locked the doors for the night. We started hearing pings and bangs from somewhere in the store. Me and the associate did another sweep of the store. Nothing. 15 minutes later, we've still been hearing noises. We check the stock room, bathrooms, everywhere. Me and associate are looking at each other and quietly freaking the FCK out. We told her the store was closed. She apologized and left immediately since our registers were off for the night anyway. I still have no idea how this woman avoided us that long. We were situated in a strip mall in which there was a gym next to us, and beyond it was a Japanese restaurant. We often saw the restaurant staff out on the loading docks smoking. They never spoke to us or even acknowledged us. We started to feel like they didn't like us. We figure it's the typical "I'll only be a few minutes. Late customer, nope, not opening door." Luckily, ours weren't among them, but her and pretty much everyone else in the gym were. The people working the restaurant were arrested, I'm assuming for vandalism, and when the lady from the gym talked to the cops later, they said the restaurant people had admitted they did it because they felt the gym patrons were taking up their parking lot. Don't know what happened with it beyond there. I work in a psychiatric hospital that has been around for around 100 years. There are many old abandoned buildings mixed among the newer modern buildings that we use today. Over the years I've heard many strange stories of ghosts and things that go bump in the night. I decided to step outside into the cool air and sneak a cigarette to wake myself up. I slipped out one of the rear entrances that backed onto one of the old abandoned buildings and leaned against the brick wall and lit my cigarette. I was looking down and crunching my feet in the snow when something caught my attention from the corner of my eye. In the building across the way there was a strange bluish light flashing in one of the windows. I continued to watch the light as it randomly blinked off and on. It wasn't steady, and at moments it was almost flashing as fast as a strobe light. Other times it would remain on for 5 to 10 seconds before going dark for a bit. I pulled out my cell phone and filmed it for a few minutes before returning to the ward. It was a creepy feeling, and my short video has been a very popular share amongst my co-workers. Although this happened many years ago, I still get newbies at the hospital asking me to show them the ghost video. 5 times a month I do the night shift in a psychiatric ward for the elderly. We once had a female patient with schizophrenia, one of our in-and-out patients, well known to all of us, very thin and actually rather nice. She would be always polite to us and you could sometimes have a laugh with her. I worked third shift at this place and the ladies' bathroom was in the office, so you had to go up there by yourself. One night, I walk up there and I just kept feeling watched. So I get in the bathroom, shut the door and lock it behind me. You needed a key to get into said bathroom after hours. On-off switch literally gets pushed up right before my eyes with no hand attached. Needless to say, I would have peed my pants if I wasn't already pisses in the toilet. I used to work overnight at a psych hospital and I did rounds to make sure the patients were asleep each hour. One time I walked in a patient's room at 3:30 a.m. and she was sitting on the edge of her bed in the dark smiling from ear to ear with her eyes wide open. I effed off real quick. I popped out the back of the office to have a smoke at around 4 a.m. Was still fairly dark outside but dawn was beginning to break, so there was some light. I noticed a guy sitting in a car facing towards the building, made eye contact. We looked at each other for a few seconds. Didn't think much of it. Next door to us was an auto customizing shop. At 8 a.m. the 2 guys that owned the place came into work. One went out to get ready to push the car inside to work on. It was their car that they were going to strip down and use in a derby. Freaks, obviously, goes inside and they call the police. Turned out the woman's gangbanger boyfriend had beaten her, then chained her to the bumper of his car and drove around the neighborhood dragging her, for many blocks, on pavement. Then decided to dump her body inside the car parked behind our offices. There's no reason to be scared of ghosts and the paranormal, there's no such thing. But people, now those are something to be afraid of. I work mostly nights at a surgical ward. About the only creepy thing that comes to mind is when patients who sleep with their eyes open / can close their eyes seem to follow you with their eyes when doing rounds. Oh, and that time when I found a tweaking homeless man beating off down in the basement. Other than that, nothing. You'd think a hospital would be haunted with all the traumatic deaths that happens there, but nope. The legendary office ghost that wanders the hallways and stairs. Worked the 5 to 8 shift at a library, caught a hobo jacking off one time. I froze for a moment, scared and caught off guard. After a minute I got my 2000 lumen torch out and shone it at the face. It was a teenager with his arms wrapped around something body shape. After 10 seconds a second face appeared. It was a teenage girl. Sitting in my van for a second I just realized the young, kissing couple saw me march towards them, unzipping myself. I wasn't a night worker, but I worked in a mall that might have been haunted. A couple of the times I had to work midnight release parties, worked for EB Games at the time. My coworker and I witnessed some weird shit. One of my other coworkers said she saw a small child running around after closing up one night. Followed him for obvious reasons, but he just seemed to disappear. She got the security guard involved and they both searched up and down the area and didn't find a thing. I talked to a couple of the security guards who worked there and they said stuff like that was pretty common, and that motion sensors installed in some of the stores were tripped so often that they'd learned to basically just ignore them when it happened. I only worked there for about 7 months, and the potential ghosts were the least of our worries. I was helping a cousin clean an office building when I was 13ish and had a can of Coca sat on a counter. A minute later I hear a loud pop and look back to see it flying through the air, spilling on everything. Only thing that's ever happened to me I can't explain. I used to work second shift at a hospital. Not even that late. There was one evening I was on an elevator going down. The elevator stops on a floor to let people on, and I hear what sounds like a housekeeper cart coming around the corner ready to get on. But I don't see anyone, so I stick my head out. No one is there, but there's a cart to the side. I just backed up into the elevator and let the door shut. Also swore I heard someone talking while in an elevator. I opened it up so they could get on and no one was there. Not a night worker, but we did get out late working at an amusement park. So as a supervisor we had to head to our department office, games, to record the profits and costs of the day and prepare the paperwork for the next night. One night as I was walking out, this little kid ride lights up and starts running all by itself. Was pretty eerie at the time, but I later found out that the mechanics were just remotely testing it. Oh, and the year before one of my supervisors had told me that homeless people sometimes broke in to spend the night and then sent me out to go count prizes. I hope this blows up. These should be good. When I was doing night audit, graveyard shift, for the hotel I work at, one night at around 2:30 a.m. I heard the main entrance door open and a tall white man dressed exactly like WWE's The Undertaker walks in without saying a word. He turns around, nods his head and walks right out. I didn't WTF had just happened. I'm a former night worker. I worked a 5 to 10 p.m. shift at FedEx Ground. One night I was loading a truck and one of my bosses was walking around and checking the trucks and whatnot. But this one night he wasn't on the ground. It was like he was a villain out of some action movie, and I remember me and him making eye contact until he walked past my truck. It was so creepy. This is probably not too exciting compared to everyone else, but I'll tell it anyways. I worked the overnight shift of a hotel in the mountains, and in the summertime, I like to keep our sliding front doors locked to open, so the breeze comes in. I saw something out of the corner of my eye, so I got up and saw a baby bear cub, no bigger than 50 pounds, about 10 feet away from me. Now, I'm not afraid of bears really, since I have lived in the mountains for many years, and these are town brown bears. Big scaredy cats for the most part. I yelled really loud and they all started to scamper towards the front. As soon as they were out of the door, I turned the knob to shut it permanently. Here's the creepy part. While shutting the door, I see Mama Bear about 20 feet away, luckily through a bunch of glass, and she locks eyes with me. Stares me down for a good 10 seconds and then I suppose determines I'm not a threat, and walks off into the forest. Locking eyes with a mama bear is not something I want to do again. Okay, this is not for me, but from my uncle's best buddy, Theodore. He worked as a night guard at a port in 1996, which means he was around 35 years old then. Anyway, it was an hour after his shift began. He was sitting in a small guard room in front of a huge storage room in the port. He had a radio playing some stuff in low volume and his eyes were heavy. Suddenly, as he reports, he feels like he was pushed off the chair by a force. He gets super scared and tries to do a reality check. He assumes that he got off balance cause of the sleepiness and he calms down. Anyway, he proceeds to put his head on the counter he had the radio on, and relax. He says that after that he got really creeped out and called on the wireless to the security center, which was around 1 kilometer away. He hears jamming only. So he proceeds to leave the guardhouse and head towards the other storage behind the one he was to meet the other guard named Thomas. As he passes next to the storage he was guarding, he sees a light. It was the flashlight of Thomas who was heading for him. They opened the service door and searched for a bit. They found some kind of mess on the counters next to the door, where they put some papers and tools. Other than that, nothing. Thomas says, "Hey, probably a ghost," and nods to Theodore to move out as there was nothing. Theodore asks him if he meant it, and Thomas says, "Well, they say a few things about ghosts in the port, but I never experienced something, so I call bullshit." If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.